Hi, everyone, and welcome to The Hash, your daily beat on crypto and culture. My name is Naomi Brockwell, and today on the show, we have Ben Powers, Zack, Seward, Jen Sanasie, and Brady Dale filling in for Will Foxley. Welcome to the show, everyone. And we're going to kick off by talking about the biggest news in crypto at the moment, El Salvador. Zack, take it away.
Well, that was quick. So El Salvador President Nayib Bukele said over the weekend that he was going to submit a bill to the legislature in El Salvador to make Bitcoin legal tender. He made good on that promise yesterday, and in a flurry of late-night activity, it was approved by a supermajority of Salvadoran lawmakers. So Bitcoin is legal tender in El Salvador, and that is quite a major milestone for the original cryptocurrency. There's a lot to talk about here. The autocratic process really worked quickly, and we got this thing done over the line fast. Plenty of topics to discuss here. I'm going to throw this to Naomi. She was actually in the Twitter Spaces where a lot of this was convened in dramatic fashion last night. Naomi, what's your take on this whole development?
Yeah, so I, yesterday on the show, I was like, guys, this is huge. It's exciting. All of this. We hadn't actually seen, what was written in the bill at that stage. It wasn't available. So on the surface, it seems like this is a great win for Bitcoin. Now that we can actually look through it, it's not as exciting from my point of view. Great win for Bitcoin, not a great win for freedom. So George Selgin, who's a very prominent money expert, I actually have his book on my bookshelf behind me. He wrote a fantastic Twitter thread that broke it down. Basically says that, you know, while this does make it easier for Salvadorans to employ Bitcoin as a medium of exchange without incurring any penalties to do so, you're a big thumbs up there. Super awesome. It does undermine free choice in currency instead of promoting it. There are two specific articles, Section 7 and Section 13. Section 13 says that all obligations in money expressed in USD existing before the effective date of this law may now be paid in Bitcoin. So that goes against the freedom of contract of, past legal tender laws that did allow for contracts payment to be paid in specie to be settled using fiat money. So if you had a contract with someone you thought you were getting US dollars, now you're obligated to take Bitcoin. So it takes away, as I said, the freedom of contract there. And then Article 7 is worse. So it says that every economic agent must accept Bitcoin as payment when offered to him by whoever acquires a good or service, which is a big deal. It necessitates, a lot of economic understanding, merchants, getting how this technology works, being able to use it correctly and safely. So, the takeaway of this is that, it's great that the Salvadorian government is getting involved with this, but this isn't free choice in currency. That's why I like Bitcoin, not because it's mandated by government, but because it's a free alternative that people are able to choose to use. But I'll throw this to the group. Brady, I saw your hand go up.
Oh, no, it didn't. But I mean, I do think this is a big deal.
Maybe that was Ben.
Yeah, Ben definitely did.
Sorry,
I can jump in here.
Ignoring you.
Good. We look just alike. It's the beards.
Exactly. We're working on it. No, I think that what's really interesting here is that mandate that you talked about, Naomi. I think that just leaves so many questions unanswered, particularly when you're looking at like the tech infrastructure that might have to go with that. And also just like, how markets and economies like work in practice versus kind of how they work like as formal economies. And so, I think there's just going to be a lot to unpack, and like how long that transition is going to take is going to be another thing I keep an eye on, because this isn't something where you can like snap your fingers. And I know that this was sort of Jack Mallers and Strike have been involved in this, so maybe they take a more prominent role in the country around payments. But yeah, that just to me is going to be the real question, is how quickly that can happen and what that looks like, on the ground.
Naomi, just going off the back of what you were saying, I was reading that businesses, while everyone is required to accept crypto, the government will convert it to US dollars for you at point of sale if you don't want to hold Bitcoin. And so does that address what you were speaking about to some level?
No, it doesn't, because they're still mandating that people accept Bitcoin. Bitcoin, like the freedom of choice is fantastic. But if every government started to mandate and said everyone must now accept Bitcoin, no, I would not be against that either, even though it's great for Bitcoin. And it's very big of the government to have this fund. $150 million is in it, which isn't that much. And they're saying, we're going to use this to convert any Bitcoin to US dollars if the merchant requires. It still requires the merchant to accept the Bitcoin. And it's just the principle of the thing, that compulsion, that coercion, I think is against the ethos of Bitcoin. Also, if you are accepting Bitcoin and you have to accept it, there are fee issues involved with that. A lot of people are talking about Lightning Network as the solution to this, but a lot of the solutions that they're throwing around are all custodial. So, does this actually make it worse in terms of censorship of money and all of that in an economy where 70% of people are paying with cash and not actually using the banking system? So it's just a very interesting situation. A lot of people are very excited about this and championing it. I can understand the excitement. I mean, we actually had Japan accept Bitcoin as legal tender years ago, and there wasn't this much of a fanfare around it. But I believe that it was only as like a choice. It wasn't mandated, you must accept Bitcoin if someone offers it, which is a very different scenario. So I just think that freedom has to play a really important role when we're talking about Bitcoin, because that was really why it was created.
What surprised me about this was, if you'd asked me, I would have said the first thing that happened for Bitcoin with a nation state was it would become a part of their basket of reserve currencies. Like that would be a part of what they, use to back their economy, not that it would be used on the street first. So that was what was the big surprise to me.
Mm-hmm.
I think just one last thought.
So I just want to clarify what I said. So with Japan, I think they got close to accepting it as legal tender, but it was going to be a choice. I think they didn't actually go through with that. So I wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, it is sort of this mandatory network effect, right? If everyone can spend Bitcoin, you have to make sure that everyone will also accept Bitcoin, and that is clearly a freedom trade-off. Let's stay in the realm of regulation. We'll kick it to Ben, and we'll go stateside. What do you got, Ben?
Yeah, absolutely. So the IRS has requested $32 million in funding to kind of further build out its ability to enforce crypto taxation and hire specialized blockchain analytics contractors that can help them sort of see how money's moving around and who might be, potentially not paying proper taxes on it. Now, this story was interesting, but it comes on the heels of another story that was published yesterday by ProPublica, which looked at basically the true tax rate of some of the 25 wealthiest people in the world and finding that they paid about a true tax rate of 3%. Meanwhile, people that rely on wages and income were paying much higher rates of tax. And in fact, people such as Elon Musk had years where they did not pay any federal income tax. So these two stories, I think, just are in conversation with each other in a really interesting way. But Jen, I'd be curious to get your initial takes on these subjects.
Well, I mean, when I was reading the story, I always say this about your stories, Ben, it just made me so sad for the everyday person. The people who are working, they're getting their salaries, they're taxed on their income. And then we have people like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos who have gone complete years without paying a single % of tax. And now the IRS wants funding to go after people who hold crypto for tax, when maybe they should be focusing on getting the wealthiest people to just pay their fair share. I just think that the narrative right now is just one that it is so unequal, and it just made me really upset, So I don't know what we have to do to fix this or what has to happen next, but I'm going to kick this off to Naomi because I know that you probably have some strong feelings here.
Well, I know that as soon as I say them, everyone in the show is going to come out and hate me, as they always do when we talk about taxes. I'm just going to lay it down. All right. So this is not an issue of the government not having enough money. This is an issue of the government spending too much money. And taxes are completely immoral when the vast majority of them go to funding the military-industrial complex. So it's not, I'm completely against taking money from productive people who are building valuable systems in society to give it to a government so they can go and drop more bombs on Syria. That's just how I feel about this. And, it doesn't matter whether they also throw some crumbs to poor people in society and say, well, here's a couple of, welfare benefits. That's really not what our taxation system is funding. And so I just think that people need to be cognizant of that and stop supporting this system, saying we need more money in this system when it's just used for doing such tremendous harm in society.
Naomi, I'm not going to fight you on that, surprisingly. The thing that was interesting with the ProPublica story that there's been some commentary on is it didn't really sort of delineate what it was really saying and what it was advocating for, because the complaint is that the wealth of these folks are growing dramatically, and that's not being taxed. But we don't really tax unrealized gains, and so that's a new a new thing in the world to demand doing that, which is maybe a good idea, but it would be a big shift. Whereas with the IRS story, they're just saying we think some unrealized gains are escaping us, and we'd rather it didn't. I mean, we think some realized gains are escaping us, so it is different.
Yeah, I think it was just a really interesting kind of misalignment of incentives, though, in some ways, right? Like, this is all, I mean, to be honest, it is legal. And that's maybe the most problematic aspect of all of this. The fact that, people that are making billions upon billions of dollars in, kind of either stocks that they hold or other kind of valuations, and can borrow loans against that to live on and not have to pay high rates of taxes, which again is legal. But I think, the IRS requesting more money to try and go after people that are holding crypto, for example, and not kind of going after people who might, be doing other, maybe nefarious, maybe shady things. But again, like, we do have to say this is legal. And to me, that's just so frustrating, because that level of tax avoidance and infrastructure is totally foreign to anybody that's not earning a certain amount of money. And so when you're able to do that, you just create two completely different stratospheres of wealth in this country. And the IRS does disproportionately go after people of lower income for things like audits, sort of thereby also, leveraging the fact that maybe they can't hire an accountant or something like that, and sort of costing them even more money. So, Naomi, I do think you're right. And that sort of the way this money is allocated, for example, giving more money to the IRS, maybe to go after crypto people, while, not going after people that are potentially incredibly wealthy and doing some forms of evasion, is such a struggle and does just really deeply frustrate me. But Zack, I'd be curious to get your thoughts on any of this.
Yeah, my thoughts are mainly on the IRS sort of beefing up its outreach to the crypto community. I know we saw TaxBit signed a deal with the IRS not long ago. So the fact that they're asking for more money to enlist these contractors in their work around the crypto space is potentially interesting to me. Again, the idea that more clarity could emerge from this could be a good thing. There's still a lot of fuzziness in the system when it relates to filing crypto taxes. So the optimist in me would suggest that maybe some clarity that might work well for the rest of crypto tax filers could be coming down the pike if this funding is awarded. But we'll see. We'll see what the fruits of what the partnership with TaxBit, what the fruits of that effort might be, and who knows? Who knows what this is? Whether it's going to be second chain analysis on small time crypto holders or not, we do not know yet. So I'll throw this down to you, Naomi.
Yeah, I will just mention that if, one interesting thing about the El Salvador news is that if it is accepted as legal tender, and if it was like, well, Bitcoin is now our official currency, that would have been really interesting in terms of tax implications across the globe, because there are certain international regulations about how governments must accept the currencies of other countries. So there may have been some, it might have eliminated capital gains in countries. It might have had to be treated as currency, but that's obviously not the direction that El Salvador took. But it is interesting if that does happen, then that could be a mechanism for changing this tax burden for people regarding crypto.
All right, stick with us. We are going to take a break, and when we get back, 3 words for you. Operation Trojan Shield. We're going to talk about this big sting that went down. It's going to be fun. Stick with us. It's The Hash. Hope you're having a great day. See ya.
CoinDesk indexes, the market standard for crypto assets since 2014. Our trusted data powers billions in publicly traded funds. CoinDesk indexes are the standard used by institutions, and they're the key for investors looking to understand and access crypto markets.
CoinDesk Bitcoin Price Index, XBX, has been instrumental to Grayscale, enabling investors around the world to access Bitcoin through a regulated, familiar product.
CoinDesk indexes enabled the early adopters to build crypto investment vehicles, and they're already trusted by a new generation of global investors.
Okay, welcome back to The Hash, everyone. And we've got a really interesting story that developed yesterday. So I'm going to try and sum up the crux of it. Basically, there was a giant sting operation with all of these criminals that were captured. And the reason that they were able to be captured is because there was a mobile phone that was marketed very well by criminal influencers spread around crypto underbellies of society. And these were all meant to be encrypted, secure, all of this. Apparently, it was an FBI Trojan horse. And so it led to just a huge amount of people being captured by FBA, by Australian police. This was a global operation with lots of different law enforcement agencies participating. A super interesting story. I'm going to throw this to the group to get your takes. Ben, I'm going to throw it to you first. Let's talk about this from the side point of view of like encryption and security and devices and all of that, because it's super interesting to unpack.
Yeah, there's like tiers of different encryption, right? Like you have like end-to-end and other ones. These were like really hardware encrypted devices where they could be like wiped remotely. For example, if the individual got arrested. But basically what, seemingly happened is as other networks like this, cellular networks at least, have been taken down, other ones have kind of popped up and people start to flock to them. And so the person that kind of spun this one up was actually a confidential human source working with the FBI and basically gave the FBI the master key to decrypt all these different communications. I believe there was like 28 million sort of messages that they gathered from different individuals. And these involved things like talking about murder, talking about large scale drug deals and things like that. So on the one hand, it kind of shows that there are definitely limits to all of this and, the kind of don't trust, verify aspect of it. On the other hand, too, I think this is the real friction you see when we have this isn't a great look for encryption in some ways when you do have so many kind of nefarious individuals using them. And so I always kind of come into encryption from like everybody does deserve it. It is a really important civil good. It can also contribute to things like this. So, those are my initial thoughts here, but this has been an absolutely wild story to follow over the course of this week. And, now seemingly the DOJ is sort of turning on the people who are working at the company, even if they were helping them and saying like, no, you actually all kind of aided and abetted or interfered with various other aspects of our investigation. So now we're going to, bring charges against you as well. So this is something that's just so widespread. It seems like it's going to be ongoing for a while. And on the one hand, definitely conversations about encryption to be had. On the other hand, too, just what a wild story. This one had so many twists and turns.
So wait, the law enforcement compromised a third-party company. They didn't build a GNOME. They compromised the company that did build it?
They did it via a reduced prison sentence that they offered them. And so this developer, so basically when you have these encrypted devices, they go in and out of fashion, right? They get shut down routinely by law enforcement and all this. Whenever one disappears, another one enters the market. So the FBI decided, okay, well, we'll create one and we'll put it into the market and we'll market this. We'll get all of the top influencers in the in the criminal world, and we'll get them involved in promoting this.
Criminal influencers.
I suppose I've never heard that term. Criminal.
How was it so easy for the FBI to convince these top tier criminals to use this app like this?
Yeah, so it started out, there were just like 50 of them in their pilot phase where they said they just handed out this limited production of this series and they tested it out, and lo and behold, all these criminals were using
the influencer marketing strategy.
Exactly. And then it just grew by word of mouth from there. And suddenly everyone was using this because they knew that it was rock solid and all of the worst were on it. Therefore, it must be super secure. So very interesting story. I mean, it goes back to what we say in every show, right? Technology is neutral. It is going to be used for good and bad. When you have encryption technology, it is going to be used by bad people. It's also going to be used by people protecting themselves against adverse, hostile governments. You're going to have journalists. You're going to have human rights workers. You're going to have people who work for nonprofits, all of that, lawyers. And so it is important. Like, privacy is so important. It is a double-edged sword. And obviously the technology itself is just neutral and going to be used by both of these sides.
And Jen, I think maybe to your point, it really is just sort of that these are parallel economies, right? They function in similar ways, right? Like the incentive is like making money, and the means to do that are similar in some instances if you're looking like at market dynamics and supply and demand and all these other things. And so social networks also build around this, right? Like, and it really is just kind of, two sides of the same coin. And so it really doesn't surprise me at all that like influencers might be involved with this. Like everybody does have like these platforms that they use to communicate, and we're all interconnected online. And, there's so much of the internet that you don't see every day where a lot of these things go on.
Yeah, I will add to that like a lot of people are, and what you were saying before, Ben, about, well, this is kind of the problem of encryption and why people don't like it. I would say that's why we don't need to crack down on encryption, because clearly law enforcement do have innovative means of going after the actual bad guys and doing specific targeting. I mean, they literally did direct targeting of people to try and get them on their devices. That's what we need, not a total global blanket crackdown on encryption, which is helping good people as well. We need targeted, surveillance, targeted crackdowns and all of that. So I think this was a very interesting story.
Yeah, and I think there's just like briefly, this links back to like the conversation we had about the Colonial Pipeline ransomware and the Bitcoin being seized by, federal law enforcement. And people were like, oh my God, did Bitcoin get hacked? Like, what happened? And it's like, no, it was like probably a cloud server somewhere or something else like that. And like here again, I think it's always kind of the human element that's like the point of weakness, right? Not necessarily, technology being broken by some quantum computer or something like that. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, let's change topic here.
Yeah, sticking to the theme of regulation. So SEC Commissioner Hester Peirce said that overzealous regulation could hinder innovation. Surprise, surprise. So she did an interview with the Financial Times. She said that she's concerned that the initial reaction of a regulator is to always say, I want to grab hold of this and make it like the markets I already regulate. So I think Hester speaking about this to the Financial Times is great. Is great for the mainstream audience, kind of like understanding how the SEC works and why SEC regulation can hinder innovation. But I'm going to throw this right back to you, Naomi. I feel like I've thrown to you so much on the show, and I'm so sorry for that.
It's because I love Hester Peirce. I love that woman. I think she's doing so much good for the crypto world by just pointing out, so much rational thought. Who would think that regulators had such rational thoughts? It goes back to this is in sharp contrast if you compare her to someone like Ben Lawsky, the architect of the BIT license. So at the hearings of the BIT license, Ben Lawsky, I remember him saying something along the lines of I don't care if this innovation allows 1,000 flowers to bloom. If we catch one criminal by, or we stop one person by shutting this down, then it's worth it, And it's just that blows my mind that he would stop 1,000 potentially life-changing innovations to bloom and help people and raise standard of living and all these things that we hope crypto will do, that he would stop all of that in order to catch or stop one bad person. It's the opposite of Hester Peirce, who was saying, I think that we shouldn't be overzealous in cracking down on this because the innovation is so important. It's the unrealized effects that we don't want to shut down. And regulators tend to just look at the tangible and the things in front of them, the things that they see, and not the potential that they're stopping. But Zack, I'll throw it to you.
Yeah, time's interesting here because we reported last night that a CFTC commissioner, he made a speech to a gathered body, and he said DeFi derivatives may be illegal. It was really an interesting document. It cited the Wikipedia definition of DeFi. Also gave a shout out to a CoinDesk article on DeFi, which was pretty cool. But he sort of had this thing that you were saying, Naomi. We need to cram this existing thing into this existing category, and these are not necessarily applicable frameworks, right? Like DeFi, cryptocurrency, they produce kind of new paradigms for how these things should and could be viewed. And I think the fact that Hester Peirce is pushing back on this, while other members of the regulatory apparatus in DC are starting to wake up to DeFi and its failure to comport with existing regulations. It's going to be an interesting tension that we're going to see play out over these years as crypto becomes more of a serious concern in Washington. But the fact that we're getting both sides of this coin in short order is pretty interesting. Jen, I saw your hand up, so I'll toss it back to you.
I just want to point out that the Securities Act was drafted in 1933, and the Howey test that is used to kind of determine whether something is an investment contract is from 1946. And so the law has just operated like this for so long, where they have one document or one piece of case law, and they just rely on that for almost a century. And so I think the change that needs to happen here is at a really grassroots level. We need to change the whole structure of how regulation and the law is looked at for when it comes to technological innovation. And that just seems like a really huge feat to me. But Ben, did I see your hand go up?
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. I think we're going to see small sort of incremental sort of precedents be set, whether it be small regulatory tweaks or, cases that are moving through the courts currently in regards to this. I also think like instances like El Salvador doing what they did also just give people more context and more options about looking at how the kind of process around like regulating these things or enabling them might go. But I think what Peirce was articulating here is, to me, it's a superhuman instinct, right? Like to kind of take something and try to put it within the thing that you know and you understand and that you might have some control over. And so to me, that's maybe more what this was getting at. It's kind of maybe saying like, look, like people are going to act probably in their own best interest. And maybe that's where this sort of self-regulatory aspects comes from, is people are not willing to walk into that gray space too often. But, I think like at the end of the day, these commissioners and regulators and everybody else, like they are all people, and they're just trying to also fit this worldview that is quite different from, I think, any sort of status quo stuff that we've dealt with in the near future into their own. And that's where a lot of this friction lies.
It feels to me, though, like Peirce is just kind of speaking to a brick wall. She has all these really innovative thoughts about the industry, but nothing is happening.
Well, let's hope that changes, because as you said before, Jen, I agree. I think we need fundamental shift. And I think all the precedents, the incremental precedents you talked about, Ben, are taking us in the wrong direction. I think that it's going to be bad for crypto, not good for crypto. But let's change track. Brady, what have you got?
So Solana, this super fast blockchain that was built by a bunch of guys from Qualcomm who helped build, the mobile architecture that all of our cell phones run on. They just got $314 million in a giant token sale, not an equity sale, but people are buying tokens, the SOL token, SOL token, led by the big guns in crypto investing, A16Z, Polychain, with all the other usual suspects like Alameda and Parify. So this is just a giant infusion, a private sale to one company so it can, grow massively. And I think this narrative is a little bit dead now, but Solana is certainly kind of one of the leading contenders if you still believe that there is going to be an Ethereum killer out there. So, Zack, you and I have put together a bunch of these stories together. What's your first reaction on the Solana story?
My first reaction is battle for the base layer. Bring it back, Brady. It was the most elite newsletter that CoinDesk has ever produced, and we need to get that back on the books. So that was my first reaction. I mean, yeah, this is $314 million based on the premise that DeFi could run much more smoothly on not Ethereum. So that to me is really interesting that some of these big guns are still investing in this thesis. You use DeFi as a minnow in the crypto ecosystem, and you just imagine how great it would be if DeFi wasn't so janky and expensive. And what Solana is trying to do is build that robust ecosystem that can provide some of the really cool functionality that DeFi offers. So I'm super fascinated that this is bringing in such a big number. And I don't know, Brady, what do you think?
I want to throw in just one tiny, I think I agree with everything you said. Just one tiny piece of fun context here is, we had some thoughts in our story from Kyle Samani of Multicoin Capital. That guy has been trying to run a short on Ethereum ever since he backed EOS in a giant way back in 2018. And he has probably made a ton of money doing it. But at the same time, Christine Kim reported this week that another like $2 billion went into ETH2, bringing it to a total of $14 billion, committed to just sit there until ETH2 fires up, right? So like people still believe in Ethereum. Naomi, I saw your hand.
Yeah, I would have to concur with what you're saying, Brady, in that this is potentially the biggest contender for an Ethereum killer. And what you mentioned, Zack, about like the battle for the base layer, like it's interesting because we have all of these scaling solutions being proposed on Ethereum. We've probably got like 4 main contenders, but it fragments the network. It actually makes it more difficult if different people are using, different layer 2 solutions for their DeFi work. So what Solana does is kind of bring that scaling option to the base layer, which is why people are saying, well, in the long term, this could actually consolidate better. This could actually be better for DeFi projects. So I'm interested to see what's happening there. I'm also watching other projects as well who are kind of delving into the DeFi space, but it surprises me that Solana kind of came out of nowhere and then is like fully in the headlights now. Everyone is looking at them as this potential Ethereum competitor. And also, I mean, they compete in a very different way to Binance, right? So Binance Chain has taken all of that extra stuff that was on Ethereum and said, hey, we'll make it cheaper and better and less congestion. But at the end of the day, it's very centralized and people realize that. So long term, people are just saying, well, Binance is just kind of an intermediary and we will move to something more like Solana or perhaps another contender. But it is interesting that Solana has kind of taken the lead as one of the main contenders. But Zack, I'll throw this to you.
Yeah, I mean, it's also sort of another data point in the Midas touch of Sam Bankman-Fried, who's become really closely associated with the Solana blockchain, investing heavily in the network, running several of his businesses that are tightly woven into the Solana ecosystem. So the fact that his touch here, his signature is being invested in quite heavily from some of the leading backers in the space. Adds to that narrative of SBF becoming a growing icon in the crypto industry.
Yeah, for sure. Go ahead, Jen.
Go for it, Jen.
Sure. Naomi, I was just going to ask you a question, and maybe I have it completely wrong, but this reminded me of the SEC case against Library. Aren't they going after them for a token sale similar to this one?
So I don't know anything about Solana token sales and all of that. Library, I mean, it's a very interesting situation because they never had a token sale. They never had an initial coin offering, which kind of makes it an outlier. And people are like, where are the victims in this? But I'm not sure, Brady, maybe you can talk to what Solana is doing. Are they having some sort of token sale?
This sale would be a private sale. So I don't think that would run afoul of, because these would all be accredited investors. But you can, I mean, a regular person can go and buy Solana right now. You actually have to do a little hop through Ethereum to do it, which also going back to Naomi's point, if Solana really is great, it could just be the app layer for Ethereum, and then Ethereum, it could end up being the ETH layer 2 solution, right? But yes, I mean, so you can buy Solana as a regular person if you go through Ethereum, but it hasn't been a hyped token sale. It's just if you want to use the network and you want to get some SOL to do it, you can. So I don't think it's similar to any of the actions the SEC has taken so far.
All right, well, we'll be watching Solana. It brings me into sunny illusions, and we'll watch it in the coming days. We're going to leave it here for today on The Hash. Thanks so much for chatting with us, Brady. It's Zack, it's Jen, it's Ben, it's Naomi as usual. We'll be back tomorrow with more on crypto news and culture, and stick with us on CoinDesk TV, 3 p.m., all about Bitcoin. Check it out. Till then, just read us all on CoinDesk.com. It'll be fun. All right, we'll see you tomorrow. Thanks so much, and have a good one. Bye.
Bye.
Peace.